Welcome to Wine Soundtrack USA. Listen to the passion with which producers narrate their winery and their world. In 30 answers, discover their stories, personalities, and passions.
Hello, friends and listeners of Wine Soundtrack. This is Allison Levine, and today I'm in the Dry Creek Valley at the ever-famous Ridge Vineyards with winemaker Shuana Rosenblun. Shuana, welcome to Wine Soundtrack, and for those who don't know, tell us about Ridge Vineyards.
Okay. So Ridge started in 1962. Our original location was Monte Bello down in Cupertino. And then in 1999, 2000, our Lytton Springs facility was built. And that's sort of in a very small nutshell.
And tell me, obviously you specialize in zinfandel, but what grapes, what do you work with?
Sure. So at Monte Bello, we grow Bordeaux varietals and Chardonnay. So Cab Franc, Merlot, Petit Verdot, Chardonnay, and a little bit of Zinfandel. Here at our estate vineyard at Lytton Springs, we grow Zinfandel and allies, we call it. So Zinfandel, Carignan, Petit Syrah, Alicante Bouschet, Mataro, and some white grapes interplanted. We also purchase fruit from outside growers, mostly mixed field blends of Zinfandel and then some fun other things, like we do purchase some Val d'Aiguille, some Vermentino and Falangina, but mostly within kind of the Zinfandel wheelhouse here.
And it's Ridge Vineyards, so how many vineyards do you have? How many acres total?
Good question. So here in Sonoma, we have about 250 acres of our estate vineyard. All of which is farmed organically.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And what's your total case production?
We're doing about 90,000 cases annually.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. And with all those grapes, and we're sitting in your office and you have a big board, how many different wines do you make? How many SKUs?
It depends given the year, but usually about 30.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. And your wines are available all across the United States? Are they available outside the U.S. Or in certain markets, direct to consumer? What's sort of the layout?
Yeah. So we have international distribution. I mean, we're kind of focused on certain wines domestically and then certain wines internationally. But our largest production wine is called Three Valleys, and it represents the three valleys of Sonoma County. So we're looking at Dry Creek Valley, Alexander Valley, Sonoma Valley. And this wine is our largest production at about 30,000 cases. And you can go sit down in Hong Kong and find a wine by the glass of Three Valleys. You can find some in Italy as well.
Wow.
So yeah, it's a fun wine to represent our portfolio internationally.
I love it. Yeah. So for you, what is your first memory relevant to wine?
Well, my dad taught me how to read bricks on a refractometer at the age of 3. So probably somewhere around there. I, used to stomp grapes all throughout my childhood with my family. My Girl Scout troop used to come stomp grapes at the winery. I grew up in a winemaking family. My parents started a winery called Rosenblun Cellars back in 1976. And that grew during my childhood. And so all throughout my childhood, it was go to school, mom picks us up, and then we would go to the winery and we'd all be there. Wine production takes a lot of time and effort if you're doing it well. And as a result, one may not see their family, unless they get the family involved. So, and my dad was a veterinarian, turned winemaker. So he was, practicing veterinary medicine during the day. And then the winemaking was largely something that happened after work and after school.
So it was a family activity.
It really was, yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So obviously you've been connected to wine your entire life. And obviously you have tasted lots of good wines. You've been exposed to a lot, I'm sure, even as a young kid. Is there one wine, well, I'm sure there are many, but is there one wine that comes to mind as one of those kind of aha moments, one of those memorable wines? What was the wine in this situation?
Yeah, and this is, because I was exposed to wine my whole life, I do have an aha moment wine, and it was the Cosentino Cabernet Franc. And I remember this must have been probably around 2001, 2002, somewhere around there. I remember trying it, and I'd never had a varietal Cab Franc before. Mm-hmm. And I just remember thinking, wow, this tastes like jalapenos and green bell peppers. I did not know that wine could taste like food. Uh-huh. Like, I didn't know that wine could taste like that. Because my wheelhouse was so Zinfandel based, that wine was kind of a game changer for me, because I realized that there was so much I didn't know about wine at that moment, and that was kind of well, maybe I'm curious to know a little bit more about wine. But I have a larger epiphany about winemaking that comes later that we'll probably get to.
Well, if it doesn't, you'll have to bring it up.
Yeah, indeed.
So now if we were to come to your home, what kinds of wines do you drink? Are you drinking a lot of your own wines, a lot of local wines, or from different countries or obscure grapes?
Yeah, great question. I honestly, the grape that I drink the most of is Chardonnay. Uh-huh. I drink more Chardonnay. Yeah, I drink more Chardonnay than anything. I'm kind of a purist. I love cheese pizza. I love bean rice and cheese burritos. I love Chardonnay, all because they have simple flavors, and it's really easy to screw them up. But if you can do them well, that purity of flavor is just so satisfying when someone does it right.
I love that. Yeah. Because I too like a plain, like margarita pizza, and a plain. Yeah. Absolutely.
I get it. You know?
I'm totally with you on that. So is there a bottle of wine that you drank recently that drank really well? Something that you opened or at home, at dinner, or out at a restaurant?
Recently had the opportunity to try the 1983 Ridge Langtree Lane Spring Mountain Claret style. It was a Zinfandel Petit Syrah that was 40 years old, and it still had primary fruit, and the cork was still in excellent shape. It was just kind of a revelation in how well Zinfandel can age, because we don't always think of Zinfandel as a grape that can age, right. But the alcohol was like 11.5%. The acid was screaming. It was set up in the right way to be really successful. So that was a cool bottle of wine.
And 40 years old.
Yeah,
that's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, so that you were saying that it was a Zinfandel dominant, but it was a claret, you said, so a blend?
It was called claret. That was what the label said, but it was Zinfandel and Petit Syrah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So you were saying that you do some field blends. You're obviously blending a lot. You said the Zinfandel family and some inner plantings. And then you were talking about that Cab Franc as being one of the first kind of single varietal wines you tried. And I'm curious now, as a winemaker and working with so many different grapes, do you think there's a such thing as a perfect variety?
No, well, I mean, for what? I think it depends on the application. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I think there can be really excellent examples of every variety. No. And yes, both. I don't know.
Well, and then this is always the sort of the question that everyone kind of rolls their eyes at. But obviously, perfection is something that some people try to achieve. And I'm curious your opinion on wine critics and scorers and the role they play in wine.
So I am a recovering perfectionist over here, and so I think we like the term progress, not perfection. Mm-hmm. So I like that a lot. We kind of subscribe to the Steph Curry school of, yes, Steph Curry is the greatest basketball player on the planet, and at every single press conference he gets up and says, well, there's always room for improvement. We can always do better. We're going to get back out there and practice, and we're going to give it our best. And we have that same philosophy about winemaking.
Well, and a lot of your wines have scored very well.
Yes. And I think, wine critics, we're very grateful that wine critics love our wine and, continue to give us I think excellent scores, in addition to some giving us some constructive criticism where they feel is appropriate. And, I think the wine world wouldn't be where it is today academically without critics. So I have a great appreciation for what the critics do.
So for you as a wine drinker, you might have answered this already, but red, white, or rosé?
Chardonnay.
Still or sparkling?
It's funny, if you'd asked me this 10 years ago, I would have said sparkling, like get everything else away from me, and now it's still Chardonnay. Give me Chardonnay.
I love that.
And I want oak, and I want malolactic, and I don't want it to hit me over the head. I want a really beautiful, well-balanced wine.
With acidity.
Oh, you betcha.
So, obviously, as a Chardonnay drinker, it's a very versatile grape and very food-friendly. And maybe that's just the default for all things. But do you have any rules that you follow for food and wine pairing? Any suggestions you offer other people? Do you believe in the old adage of white wine and fish and red wine and meat? Or do you have a little more come what may attitude?
Yeah, I think yes to all of that. I mean, I think, the tried and true rules are there for a reason. Like, Sauvignon Blanc with fish tastes awesome. Sancerre with fish tastes awesome. But I think, you can also kind of pigeonhole yourself. And I think with climate change happening and the evolution of all of these, different styles of wine that we're seeing, I think it's harder to subscribe to, this is a classic this or a classic that, because winemakers are having to deal with a lot of different issues based on climate and based on what grapes are growing successfully there. But I'm sort of the school of thought of do some experimentation. I mean, I will give you like one of my all-time favorite pairings with Cabernet Franc is salsa verde Doritos.
Really?
Absolutely. The spice and the spice. It's so good, right? Because it's, I mean, when you're thinking about wine pairing, you're thinking about flavors or aromas that are similar or radically different, right? They either compare or contrast. Another one that's really, really awesome. And I
love that salsa verde Doritos.
Yeah, you can.
It's great.
You can go very highbrow. I mean, we can talk all day about the most epic meal that cost $300 and the wine pairings were perfect. But let's talk about if you're going to your snack cabinet and you want, I mean, realistically, like on a Tuesday, we're not making a $300 duck meal.
And sometimes you just want to sit on the couch, have a glass of wine, and
snack on something, right?
Exactly.
A go-to snack for Zinfandel is Cheez-Its, guys. I'm telling you. The Cheez-It gets the job done with almost any Zinfandel.
Wow, I love it.
Viognier, this is fun. Viognier paired with celery with peanut butter on it is fantastic. Ooh. And also goes further if you think about the application of Viognier pairing well with like Thai dishes. There's a lot of peanut butter and stuff in Thai and Vietnamese food, and it pairs really well. So there's something about that that's really good. I'm always game for the easy pairing. In addition, like I said, it's what's easy, what's fun, what tastes good, and have fun with it. It doesn't have to be, it doesn't have to be so serious that we're losing our minds and spending our whole paychecks trying to pair something well with a wine. And my other thing is try pairing vegetables with your wine. Like avocado pairs beautifully with almost any wine because of the fat content. You can also, pour, actually this really epic Zinfandel pairing I have. You grill half an avocado and then you slice it up, pour olive oil over the top and a little bit of lemon juice and a little bit of sea salt, and that with Zinfandel is stunning.
I love it.
It's fantastic.
Oh my God, you're making me so hungry.
I know, my stomach's growling too.
So for somebody who hasn't had the pleasure to taste Ridge wines yet, what do you think they're missing out on?
Ridge is a classic American winery. Back in 1962, Paul Draper said, hey, if we want to be the best winery in the United States, we need to use American oak. And so we started using American oak in the 60s, and I mean exclusively American oak. And I think Ridge's flavor profile has a lot to do with that beautiful American oak profile. I don't know another winery that uses exclusively American oak. They're probably out there, but I don't know them. And, you know, as someone who's been kind of ridge adjacent my whole life and a big ridge fan, a club member before I worked here, I can say that I knew that there was going to be a consistent profile. Anytime I popped a bottle of ridge, it's like, oh, it's going to be elegant and powerful, and it's going to have that barrel profile that I know and love. But, you know, reverse engineering that as someone who wasn't making it and trying to break down, like, how are they getting that profile? Like, how are they achieving that profile? I never knew until I got here, and it's like, oh, it's all of these different American barrels, like all of the different Coopers that creates this gorgeous spice that really reinforces the flavor profile in the ridge wines. And I think also, you know, this is so overused now, but balance. I mean, I think we do all native fermentations here. We don't use any yeast. And a lot of people don't realize native yeast, they have some very fickle parameters for how they are willing to operate. And if you bring in fruit that's 26 bricks, the yeast is not going to go to work. It's going to quit. You're going to have a stuck fermentation. So we really need to do, when fruit comes in, if the bricks are too high, the sugar's too high, we really need to water it back, you know, with acid and water back to about 24 bricks. Because otherwise our native yeast will not perform. And so in order to do that, all of our wines end up being between 13 and 14% alcohol because of this environment that we need to create for our native yeast. So it's not only the style of wine we like to drink, but it's also functional to make it work.
So if space aliens were to land on your property right now, which of your wines would you want to welcome them with, to say, welcome to Ridge Wines?
Lytton Springs.
Springs?
Yeah.
We're sitting here at a period where usually harvest is starting. It's starting a little later this year. But I'm curious, as a team, let me start first and ask, with harvest coming later, are there any signs or predictors you look for that are going to tell you what a vintage is? And as we sit here in a vintage that had so much rain earlier and is starting so late, I mean, are there signs you're looking for that are going to tell you what's going to happen?
Yeah, I think, you know, we're always kind of looking for signs, trying to engage with the vines out there. But I will say we have really healthy looking canopies right now, which is a good indication that the grapes are going to be healthy. We're also looking at 1 to 2 clusters per shoot, which it's not a huge crop out there, which is kind of exciting because I think we're going to have some good fruit. The clusters look a little bigger than normal, so cluster weight is sort of amplified. And it's also been a mild growing year. I mean, we didn't get into any 90-degree days until July. So I think that's really slowed down veraison. I mean, tomorrow's August 1st, and we're just starting to see veraison, meaning, you know, I mean, the soonest we could harvest those grapes would be 30 days from now, and physiologically, they might be ripe, but the flavors might not be there. So we're going to have our work cut out for us a little bit, just trying to go through and make sure everything is physiologically ripe and not just the bricks are there, because we need that full flavor profile to happen. But it seems to be an exciting vintage.
Well, and speaking of vintage, you know, is this an anomaly, or do you see variation year to year? And is that variation grandiose, or is it just little blips along the way and everything's pretty consistent?
Yeah, no, there's definitely variation. And if you think about on a micro level versus a macro level, you know, if you think about like 15 years ago, 20 years ago, you could tell your team, you know, with certainty, sure, go ahead and take Labor Day off. We'll start harvest after Labor Day. And then 2008, 2009, those years started happening. And I'd say 2008 or 9 through 2020, 2021, we're starting mid-August. And it seems like the date just started creeping back in August. First it was September 1st, and then August 28th, and August 20th. And you see, last year we started on August 17th.
Wow.
And yeah, there's absolutely no way we're starting on August 17th this year. And so while this is really awesome news, I mean, if you think about the hang time that these grapes are going to get, that's really excellent. But, again, due to climate change, there are all of these factors that I know all of us we may not say it out loud, but we're all getting nervous that, we're going to go into wildfire season and our fruit's not going to be ripe yet. So, I mean, we're hoping for a beautiful growing year, and we're hoping that the ground is still saturated enough from the winter's rains that we'll be in good shape. But yeah, it's having the grapes on the vine until November. In 2004, 2005, you would have said, awesome, going to be an excellent vintage. And I think it will be an excellent vintage as long as we don't have to deal with too many outside factors.
Yeah, absolutely. So do you find yourself walking through the vineyard and talking to the vines, encouraging them along, or do you spend more time talking to the wine when it's here in the winery?
Absolutely both. Yeah, no, we start at 7:00. So every morning at 7:00, I get in here, make my cup of coffee, and then I walk through the vineyard, through our Lytton East and Lytton West vineyard, just to check on things and say hi to the vines and encourage things along. I'm a huge fan of talking to the wine. When my daughter was a baby, I would fully explain everything to her that I was doing with words. I believe that there's an exchange of energy between entities, whether that's humans, whether that's humans and plants, humans and wine, whatever it is. On the day we bottle our wines, I wish my wine a happy birthday and tell it to go out and show the world everything that it can be. And, I think putting the good vibes into the wines is really important.
I love that. Yeah. Do you have any good luck rituals when harvest is going to start that you do or that you and your team do?
Yeah, I mean, I have some kind of, internal stuff that I do that I'm not going to share with you. But yeah, just, getting my mind right, getting my head in the right headspace. But for the guys, for our team, it's really about making sure everyone feels prepared. And so that means, starting right about now, we do some team building stuff. Like last week, we all went to an A's game together. We all went and did some team building later in the week. And then making sure we all have a little bit of downtime and some very chill days. Like if I can get it to the point where my cellar guys are a little bored over the next couple weeks, that's achieving the goal. And if there's a couple days I can let them go home early or something, then I feel like we all kind of get in this beautiful, relaxed headspace. And then when harvest starts, it starts to roll slowly, but then it really speeds up. And I feel like as long as we have that downtime and everyone gets in that really beautiful mental space, we're good to go. We're solid and we're ready to take on any challenge.
Yeah. Well, you grew up in wine.
Yes.
And you were put to work at a young age.
Yes.
But I'm curious, when you were a little girl, what did you want to be when you grew up? Did you always know you wanted to be a winemaker?
Absolutely not. I wanted to be a fashion designer. And this is, I came to wine honestly because I did not want to be a winemaker. So growing up, it was just this dirty, smelly thing that my family did that we had to be a part of. And it was like, that smell, this smell of fermentation that I now know and love. But when I was a child, it was like, that disgusting, weird smell that smells like nothing else. So much so that I wanted to be a fashion designer, and then that sort of pivoted. I've always been an artist. I was always doing drawings. And so then in high school, I took, art 1, art 2, art 3, art 4, and that's as high as art went. And so I asked my teacher if I could take art 5 and art 6, and she said they don't exist. And I said, well, can I propose a curriculum for both of these? And so I did. I proposed a curriculum for Art 5 and Art 6 to our school, and they approved both of the curriculums. Wow. And so I piloted Art 5 and Art 6 in my high school. I was the only person who took it, but I got credit for it.
And they offer it today?
I don't know.
Oh.
I don't know. Yeah, but it was kind of selfish, because Art 5 was, I was going to paint murals all over the school all day. And they're like, okay, fine. And Art 6 was some version of that. But I was really into art, and I ended up getting a full ride scholarship to California College of Arts and Crafts. And I went there. My undergraduate degree is in ceramics and art education because I wanted to teach art. And then I went on and did my master's degree at San Francisco Art Institute in sculpture and theory. Wow. And during that time, a lot of people have no idea that ceramics and sculpture majors are required to take chemistry. Because you have to understand what chemicals you're mixing together and then heating to 3,000 degrees. You don't want to blow up the building.
Right.
Because you can. There are certain chemicals that you don't put in there.
Never thought about that.
Yeah, no, people have no idea. And so during that time, after being raised at the winery, working in the cellar, sitting in on blends with all the winemakers and everything, I was sitting in my chemistry lab, and I had made my base glaze, and I had distributed it into about 20 cups. And I had my triple beam scale, and I had my goggles and my notebook, and I started making chemical additions, and I started noting chemical additions to cup 1, this, that, and the other thing. And I'm going through this process, and I had this epiphany. This is the exact same process as blending wine. And when I had that epiphany, it made me realize that winemaking was art. And that had absolutely never been my perspective before. And so after I had that epiphany, I came back to work at the winery, because I always worked at the winery during summers or weekends or whatever. And I came back to work, and I was curious, in a way that I hadn't been before. Before, it's like, yeah, okay, we hook this to this, we do this, we turn this on, yeah, I know what to do. But now my question was why? Why do we do this? Why do we do 2 punch downs a day? Why do we think punch downs are good? Why do we like pump overs? Why do we age in this type of oak? So all of a sudden, the question of why brought me to a brand new world of just never-ending knowledge. And I continue to say, I think I'm still enamored by wine to this day, because you can never know everything about it. And that quest, that process is really fun and really satisfying.
I love that. And in a way, it's weird how something completely unrelated brings you full circle right back to where you always were.
Yeah, I tried hard not to be a winemaker. I really did. So I said I came by it honestly.
And so I'm curious, when you're not working, how do you spend your free time? Do you do art in your free time?
Yeah, pretty much. Almost all of my free time is spent. So my daughter is 8 years old. We do a lot of art. My husband is also an artist. So as a family, we do a lot of art. Lots of swimming, lots of river swimming. Love to go on adventures, love road trips, love camping, love baseball games, love going to football games. So yes, sports and recreation, I guess, would be the answer there.
And who are your teams?
A's and Raiders, because I'm loyal like that.
And if the A's or the Raiders were to win a championship in their respective sports,
yes,
which of your wines would you want to present them with?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I'm gonna have to go again, same as the alien question. Lytton Springs. Yeah.
We're not branching out among the 30 wines you make.
No, Lytton Springs. Lytton Springs is, it's the Grand Cru. It's our estate wine. It's the wine made from the vineyards that we grow here, and it's hard to beat.
Well, you know what? If the aliens get it and the champions get it, it must be good.
We can have some too.
So when you're planning a romantic evening for you and your husband, your daughter's asleep or you guys go out to eat, what sort of wines get open to set kind of a mood of just not a Tuesday night?
Right. Yeah, we would generally start with, some bubbles, probably just a glass of bubbles, and then move into something white, probably a Chardonnay. But also, something else. I mean, anything else. We're pretty game for whatever there is. And then my husband loves Pinot. And then, yeah, probably some sort of Zinfandel based something or another. And we're not sweet wine people, so we would not end with sweet wine. It would end with dry red wine and maybe cheese.
And cheese.
Yeah.
Well, Zin and cheese works, right?
Yes.
Cheez-Its.
Cheez-Its, yeah.
So when you look back at your career, obviously, you worked with your family and your dad, I'm sure parents always impart a lot of great advice, and both in the wine world and life, and then obviously working, in the industry. Is there a person that gave you a piece of advice for life or for work that you feel that you carry with yourself on a daily basis?
Yeah, there's a lot. I mean, I was very fortunate to be able to, share an office with my dad for a decade. So, I mean, I think, and he just had so many, he was just such a wise man. He liked to say things like, sometimes you just got to throw spaghetti at the wall and see what sticks. He was definitely into kind of figure it out your own way type of encouragement, which was really important for me. And then starting at Ridge, my boss, John, had kind of the same philosophy where he was kind of like, I'm here to support you. I'll answer any questions you have. But sort of forge your path and ask questions as we go. And that was a really good learning style for me. I think the other thing my dad always used to say was, let it roll off you like water off a duck's back. If there's something that's bothering you, you just, put some perspective on it. Like, you can just let it roll off you. Yeah. There's a lot of good things, but I think the number one thing my dad always said, and I carry this with me, is never underestimate the value of a little fun. Yeah,
I like that.
Yeah.
So when you look back at your work so far, what would you say is one of your proudest achievements to date?
I have a lot of really proud moments. I think especially starting as a young female winemaker in a male-dominated industry, I think I would say there's not one, but there's definitely a list of accolades and maybe kind of a staircase that I felt was sort of a foundational building concept where it was like, wow, we've achieved this, now we can achieve this. I think achieving, racial and gender equality in the wine industry is a long process, and I think I've definitely always tried to champion that and help push that agenda forward, make it a more inclusive space. But I think at the same time, educating people on all of these different varietals that are out there and some kind of old vines that are planted in far-flung areas of California that, were once important to the California wine industry. I think finding those, championing those, that's been a lot of fun. Excuse me. In 2020, I found out that Vice President candidate then Kamala Harris was one of my wine club members. Which I found out, during the lockdown when everything changed and all of a sudden I was running a drive-through for people to pick up their wine, and I had this incredible moment where
she came by and picked up her wine?
Yes.
She did?
Yes. Yes. And I had this moment where I was like, wow, that woman looked an awful lot like Kamala Harris, and she thanked me by name. She said, thank you, Shuana, when I put, her wine in her car. And I said to the woman I was standing with, I was like, that woman looked a lot like Kamala Harris. And she looked at the iPad and she goes, it was Kamala Harris. Like, I had an absolute fangirl meltdown moment, just being such a huge fan of hers. And, she's had her share of, issues over the years, just as far as popularity goes, but I've always been a huge fan of hers and really respected everything that she's done in her career. So that was,
and you respect her taste.
She has excellent taste. So that was pretty cool for me.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So complete the sentence for me. A table without wine is like.
A blank table.
Sure.
Yeah.
So, here's a question for you. And I mean, obviously, Kamala Harris is drinking your wine, so, but not with you.
Correct.
Yet.
Yeah.
But we're sitting at a table. There's an empty chair next to you, bottles of Ridge on the table. Who from any walk of life would you want to share a bottle of Ridge wines that you've made?
Oh my gosh. Do I get one person or can I have a list?
You can have a list.
Can we have a party? A lunch party? Okay.
An eclectic lunch.
Okay. So I used to name my tanks after females, and this goes back to my master's degree study. It's a longer story, but the tanks that I named were Oprah Winfrey, Martha Stewart, Beyonce, Lena Dunham, Mindy Kaling, Aisha Curry, Michelle Obama. So I'm going to start with that little dinner party right there. That's who I want to share some wine with.
So 7 women.
7 women.
To come drink with you.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Yeah, and yeah,
like that.
yeah, and I'm thinking and maybe Steph Curry gets to come too.
And for all you know, they're also wine club members.
Right.
You just don't know.
Right.
Well, we talked a little bit about climate change and touched on that. Where do you think we'll be in 200-300 years? You think we'll still be drinking wine, making wine?
Goodness gracious. I don't know. Optimistically, I want to say yes, because, grape growing has survived the test of time, but the varietals and, what we're drinking might not look like what we're drinking today, just given our ability to grow things in certain climates. Yeah. Hopefully we are, because, geez, that would be so sad.
Well, on that note, if it was so sad and you were being sent to a deserted island or a desert island, deserted. Okay. Temperature is your choice.
Okay.
What 3 wines would you want to take with you? Chardonnay.
Yeah. No, we definitely got to have a good bottle of Chardonnay.
Any particular one or from any particular region?
I love our Ridge Chardonnay from Monte Bello. The Napa Kongsgaard Chardonnay is another favorite of mine. Probably a bottle of Bubbles. I'll go with Domaine Carneros Le Rêve. Absolutely love that bottle of wine. And then, a bottle of red wine. And you know what? I'm going to keep it consistent and say Lytton Springs.
A total house palette.
Totally.
Well, we're almost finished, but it's time for our little game of pairing wine with music.
Okay.
And so if you can tell me a singer, a specific song, a genre that a wine makes you think of, that you'd want to be sipping and listening. And we're going to start with, Lytton Springs Zinfandel.
Sure. I don't know. Lytton Springs Zinfandel would pair really well with Led Zeppelin.
Okay. And the Monte Bello Chardonnay.
Ooh, Monte Bello Chardonnay. Let's go with Casey Musgraves.
And let's see, what about, what other wine should we pick? There are so many to choose from, I don't even know. And you have so many different Zinfandels. Well, what about a Cabernet Sauvignon?
Like our Monte Bello.
Sure.
Yeah, let's see. That would have to be paired with someone tried and true. That might need to go with like the Beatles or something like that. Yeah.
And then I'm just curious, because it kind of stuck in my head, do you make a single bottling of Valdez?
We do. Yes.
What would you do with that one?
Taylor Swift.
I love it. Some of them are so much easier to pair, aren't they?
Yeah. It's so true. Well, the bubblegum poppy part of the Valdez, and I just saw Taylor Swift on Friday, so very good.
Awesome. Well, Shuana, we are almost finished. I have one last question for you. It's kind of a two-parter. And the first is, what wine region in the world is at the top of your bucket list to explore?
I've never been to the Douro. I would really like to go explore the Douro. Although South America is climbing the list as far as just many regions to go visit. I've always loved Tannat, the grape that originated in the Madiran in France, was brought over to South America. It's now the national grape of Uruguay. I'd love to do a deep dive into Carmenere and Tannat in South America. But also Mexico, guys. Don't sleep on Mexico.
Yeah.
The Guadalupe Valley in Mexico is, they're coming into their own. Go spend a weekend there. You won't regret it.
Yeah, well, the food's also really good there.
Yeah, tacos and wine. We didn't even get into that chapter.
And for people who want to come visit you here, what can they experience? How can they visit? Where can they visit? What does Ridge Wines offer?
Sure. So we have two locations. We have our northern location here in Healdsburg up in Sonoma, and then our location down in Cupertino in the South Bay area. And Cupertino, you will be blessed with views of the top of the mountain there, the top of Monte Bello, and you'll taste our world famous Monte Bello Cabernet. It was in the Judgment of Paris in the 70s, and it's an iconic wine and absolutely bucket list wine. You need to try that wine in your life. And don't miss the Chardonnay, clearly.
Because Shuana loves it.
Yeah, because I said so. And if you come here to Lytton Springs, we do also have the Monte Bello Cab and the Chardonnay. But we really specialize in zinfandel and old field blends here. So we'll greet you here with our rosé, which is from our estate fruit, all organic. And then you'll taste a bunch of our different wines that we make, a lot of Carignan, Zin-based wines. Really beautiful expressions of what Sonoma has to offer. And then Lytton Springs, and then it's a really excellent experience, and you can go online to our website and book at either tasting room, and we look forward to hosting you soon.
Fantastic. Well, Shuana, you've been fantastic. Could talk to you forever. I love it. But thank you for joining us on Wine Soundtrack, and let's go drink some wine.
Sounds like a plan. Cheers, y'all.
Cheers.
Thanks for listening to a new episode of Wine Soundtrack USA. For details and updates, visit our website, winesoundtrack.com.